Kia ora, good evening. A 33-year-old Invercargill man was seriously injured after being hit by a car on State Highway 6 near Dipton last night. Police say it's believed the man stepped onto the road in front of a vehicle travelling at about 70 kilometres. He was a passenger in another vehicle which had stopped on the opposite side of the road. Police say he's believed to have been under the influence of alcohol and was wearing dark clothing. He was airlifted to Dunedin Hospital and is believed to be still in the intensive care unit with multiple injuries and fractures. The 19-year-old driver of the vehicle which hit him had not been drinking, and police say there was no street lighting. Investigations are continuing. 3 Invercargill flats are uninhabitable following a fire in Hayward Street this morning. The fire was well involved when firefighters arrived on scene at around 10 a.m, with the fire service saying unattended cooking was the cause of the blaze. The flat's female occupant and neighbours were outside when emergency services arrived. Ambulance staff checked the woman for smoke inhalation. Senior Station Officer Neil Ladbrook says a high proportion of call-outs relate to unattended cooking, and he urges people to stay in the kitchen when cooking and to install working fire alarms. An estimated 1,240 buildings may need assessed for earthquake standards in Invercargill, and this alone could potentially cost Council $1.7 million. That's according to reports commissioned recently. Council Chief Executive Richard King says of these, around 480 buildings may need upgrade work at a cost of around $152 million. Mr King says it's a huge problem, and one issue is whether council should have to pay for assessments.
We have formed a consortium of Southland, Invercargill and South Canterbury councils, and I think the general feeling, if assessment has to be done, it should be the responsibility of the building owner, not the council, because ultimately that cost would fall on the ratepayers if the council had to do it.
I guess the argument would be that a lot of building owners couldn't afford it either.
Well, that's the conundrum. I'm sure there's going to be some building owners that have got relatively high mortgages on unreinforced masonry buildings, so that's a big question. How can they afford it?
Is there concern that we could see buildings having to be demolished in Invercargill, and I guess in particular around the CBD? I
think that is inevitable, but we don't know the extent of it. There's probably some, like if you're a building owner and you're renting it out, the tenant might be struggling to pay the existing rental and increased insurance premiums, let alone an increased rental as a result of an upgrade. So yes, there's a big question mark over that as well.
So from council's point of view, what's the next step? What's happening in terms of action?
Well, the council will consider the joint report that has been prepared, and we have to make a submission to the government by the 8th of March. And so there's quite a few issues to be considered, but ultimately whatever they decide, it really has to be a practical outcome. And I think you have to assess the risk too. For example, take a historic church that may only be used the odd time for a funeral or maybe a couple of hours on a Sunday. Does that represent a bigger risk than a building that's used 5 days of the week for 8 hours a day?
How do you think Invercargill stacks up in terms of buildings requiring work compared with other places?
I think the problem is greater in the provincial areas than it is in the large metros, and based on our analysis that we have a higher proportion of older, call them heritage type buildings, than you would otherwise see in a relative sense, say in Wellington or Auckland.
Every day is like Christmas Day for Irishman Tony Mangan, who's more than halfway through a 4-year and close to 50,000 kilometre run around the world. The 55-year-old runner was ecstatic to finish the New Zealand leg of his journey in Bluff yesterday, ticking the 18th country off his list. His epic journey began in Dublin in October 2010, and he expects to finish next October. The trip has seen him sometimes sleeping rough, but he says people offer him help along the way as well. He's no running novice, holding 2 records for 48-hour runs, and he's previously cycled around the world. On Wednesday, he'll start the Australian leg of his run. More than halfway through, he's happy to now be on the homeward stretch.
I feel ecstatic. I feel great, wonderful. Obviously, the legs are pretty tired. They're permanently tired, and I always sit down whatever opportunity I get. But excitement, adrenaline is really pushing me forward. I started my world run on October 25th, 2010 with the Dublin Marathon, and I plan to finish on October 27th, 2014, also with the Dublin Marathon at 2:05 in the afternoon.
So what are you going to do when you actually finish running?
When I finish this, the list is growing every day, but the latest list that I dreamt up on Friday was, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to lie in bed for a week. Then I'm going to take a long holiday, maybe for a month on a beach, and I'm not a beach person. And then I'm going to buy myself an expensive pair of shoes, and I'll never wear cheap shoes for the rest of my life.
After the break, how a new partnership could benefit Stewart Island's Kiwi population. Welcome back. Stewart Island is home to the healthiest Kiwi population in the country, with its population estimated to be around 20,000. However, the national icon is sparse in some areas, and it's hoped a new project will change this.
Visitors to Stewart Island could soon have more chance of seeing a Kiwi with the launch of a new project on the island. 5 Kiwi were released at Ackers Point on Friday, and another 5 are scheduled to be released as part of a $1 million project between the Department of Conservation and Air New Zealand to restore bird life and habitats at sites along Doc's 9 Great Walks. Department of Conservation Southern Islands and Morihaku Area Manager Andy Roberts says it will have benefits for the Rakiura Stewart Island Great Walk.
Well, what it's going to do is bring more wildlife to the area. And that's the thing that trampers and visitors really like, is doing a walk and being able to see wildlife. So kiwi and robins, species that really relate to Stewart Island, and linking those with the visitors that come here.
Around $200,000 is being spent on the Rakiura Walk over 3 years, with kiwi and robin transfers and dune restoration work among key areas of work. Half of the funding will go to predator control.
Predator control is really important at Stewart Island. We've got feral cats here and rats, and they'll have an impact on kiwi populations, robins, on quite a few of our native birds. And so if we can reduce predator numbers around this area, then the native bird numbers will increase.
Mr Roberts says predators are an ongoing issue on the island.
They create considerable impact on our native bird species. I mean, we're really fortunate there's no stoats or weasels or ferrets on Stewart Island. And the ongoing predator control we do is really important.
Air New Zealand sponsorship manager James Gibson says the work at Stewart Island is part of a bigger national campaign.
Yeah, Air New Zealand's partnered with DOC on a range of projects, which includes species transfer, so transporting birds and animals around the country using our aircraft, but also investing in biodiversity projects on 4 of the Great Walks. So we've got projects on the Rootburn, the Milford, Rakiura here in Stewart Island, and also Lake Wakaremoana.
The project is expected to increase kiwi and robin numbers, which may also bring more visitors to the island.
There's a lot of room for growth for visitor numbers at Stewart Island. That's really an untapped potential. But the big importance with Air New Zealand linking into this project is its new work. No one's ever brought threatened species to the Great Walk tracks, and that's going to happen right around the country. But Rakiura is our first one that we're doing. We'll be moving into the Rootburn and the Milford track with similar projects. In fact, there were teal released in Fiordland yesterday on the Milford track. So our Great Walks have a considerable growth potential. Air New Zealand's seen that, and the link with predator control and species is a link that the public are really interested in.
At the end of the project, it's hoped to have robins and kiwi visible to people walking the track, as well as kiwi numbers growing around the Half Moon Bay area. Sarah Bedford, South Today News.
A decision on 2 proposed developments, a tunnel linking Queenstown to Milford Sound and monorail project, is now in the hands of Conservation Minister Nick Smith. The Minister will meet with applicants for the Fiordland Link experience in Milford Dart Tunnel and visit the area, also considering how each project relates to the Conservation Act and economic impacts. He says the job will be difficult, with the Department of Conservation to provide reports on both proposals. The Federated Mountain Club and opposition group Save Fiordland have welcomed news of the Minister making the decision. Save Fiordland spokesperson Daphne Taylor says a long-term view is essential and the World Heritage status is of international importance. Some of James Hargest College's earliest pupils returned to the school at the weekend, 55 years after Invercargill's first co-ed high school opened. School tours with current students were followed by other activities for 115 attendees. Opening in 1958, the school originally taught only third form to 69 pupils. Former James Hargest students and teachers travelled from the USA, UK and Australia to reminisce over their high school years. Former teachers Bill Officer and Ross Bailey also launched their book, The First 5 Years, telling the history of the school, including planning applications and community concern over Invercargill's first co-education high school. Vintage aircraft took to the skies over Mandeville at the weekend as part of the annual fly-in at the Croydon Aircraft Company. Aircraft enthusiasts feasted their eyes on old planes, hangars and workshops just outside of Gore. Around 550 people were at the event, with around 30 plane loads flying in from the lower South Island. There were 10 vintage planes on site, one synonymous with the event. Originally used as top-dressing planes, the Tiger Moth has become an icon for the event that's been running since 1990. For entry-level pilots, micro-aviation offers a more affordable option, according to Colin Smith of the Croydon Aircraft Company.
We want to continue the manufacture of an entry-level type aeroplane and keep it as realistically priced, or as low as possibly priced as we can for the next the generation of pilots. Perhaps it's an entry-level aeroplane, and once they become enthused, they'll go on to to bigger and brighter and more powerful machines, I'm sure.
How popular are these planes internationally? Is there a market for the product overseas?
Well, it has generated over the years since Mac started. It has a safety factor second to none, and there's about 130 of them also operating in South Africa, and a lot of them are used as surveillance or observation platforms. They're very safe, very easy to fly, and very stable. And another, those attributes in relation to a level entry aeroplane are ideal.
Hunter Andrews reporting there. That's it from news. Coming up in sport, we catch up with the Highlanders following their first round loss to the Chiefs. That's after the weather next. Good night.